GITV would like to thank our sponsors: Condor Outdoor, Echo One USA, Contour HD, Aries by Z-Shot, and KWA.
What's up, Airsoft GITV? My name is Tim. Today we're going to be talking about scopes. This is the first part in a two-part series covering optics for your airsoft gun. We're going to get into red dot sights and hollow sights a lot later, but now we're going to be focusing on magnified sights. To help me with this video is going to be the King Arms M3 illuminated scope. The scope has a lot of nice features on it that may not be on every single scope out there, but hopefully after this episode you'll have learned enough about scopes that you'll be able to figure it out on your own. Now, before we get into how the scope works, I need to describe the different parts of the scope so that we're on the same page. Probably the most important part of the scope is the reticle, or the aiming device that's inside the lens here. Without the reticle, this is just a telescope to help you see far away. The reticle is what helps you aim your gun. This sight has a typical cross-type reticle. Boom, looks like that. Very simple, very easy to use. There are a lot of other different types of reticles, like mil-dot reticles and range-finding reticles, that have more of an application for firing real bullets. Not really applicable to airsoft guns, so we're not going to go too much in detail about that. The other parts of the scope include the objective lens, the ocular lens, which is the lens you look through, the turrets to adjust windage and elevation, the turret to adjust parallax, although a lot of scopes have the parallax adjustment right here by the objective lens, the zoom adjustment, which is right here in front of the ocular lens. This turret off to the offset here is to turn the scope on and off. Remember, this is an illuminated sight. And we have another micro parallax adjustment right here on the ocular lens. Now that you're familiar with the parts on the scope, I'm going to try to briefly describe how it works as simply as possible. Basically, an image enters the lens here, enters the objective lens here. It's flipped upside down. It is flipped right side up by a prism that's set right in here in the middle of the scope. The image is then magnified by the ocular lens and then projected out to your eye. That's how you're able to see things from further away. Now, there are some things that you need to know about the scope, like what these numbers mean, 3.5 to 10 by 40, and something called eye relief. Eye relief is described as the distance between the ocular lens and your eye. Some scopes have really far eye relief, some scopes have really close eye relief. That is relevant based on your application. So if you want a scope for your pistol, you're going to want something that has a long eye relief, because it's not going to do any good to have this type of sight on your pistol. Most scopes like this for rifles, though, have a relatively close eye relief. Now, let's get into the name of the scope. This scope is described as 3.5-10x40. How that's read is 3.5 to 10 by 40. That's important because right away, you know the name of the scope, that's how it's described. You'll know exactly how much it zooms and what size the objective lens is. So this particular sight zooms from 3.5 times to 10 times power, and the diameter of the objective lens is 40 millimeters. Whew, that's a lot of talking. Okay, so now you're familiar with the parts on the scope, you know how it works, you know the image, flipped, prism, all that other stuff. But how does this help you? How does this benefit you? How are you going to use this to your benefit? Well, there are a lot of different types of scopes out there. For example, this Leaper scope, which is a 4 to 16 by 50. This scope zooms from 4 times to 16 times, and the objective lens is much bigger at 50 millimeters. Or you might be looking at something like this. This is an AIM Sports 4 by 32 scope. This has a fixed zoom, it doesn't adjust, this is 4 times zoom all the time, and the objective lens is only 32 millimeters. The reason that you want to know all of this is so that you can make an informed purchase decision so that you buy the right scope for your application. For example, you don't want to buy a scope that has a 50 millimeter lens and get low profile scope rings. You're not going to be able to set the scope on your rifle. There are different types of scopes for different applications. Other things to keep in mind are the fact that a 10 times zoom scope is going to be able to see much further than you're able to shoot. That doesn't mean that the scope is useless, that just means you have to keep that in mind, that you might be able to see somebody, but you may have to take a few steps in before you're able to shoot them. Keep in mind also that we have a lot of scopes in Airsoft GI that are made to be used on real guns. In fact, most of them are. So they can handle the abuse of being used on an airsoft gun, but that doesn't mean you can abuse it, like toss it on the ground, drop your gun with the scope on top of it, etc. That basically covers scopes. We covered the parts of the scope, we covered how it works, we covered the terminology and the naming, and eye relief. There are a lot more terms, a lot more stuff related to scopes that you can learn about later, but these are just the main ones that you need to make an informed purchase decision. Stay tuned to Airsoft GITV. We're going to start covering red dot sights and hollow sights and all that other stuff in the future. GITV is brought to you in part by Sig Sauer by Cybergun, Operation Lion Claw's Milsim Series, G&G Armament, KJW, and Javelin Airsoft Gunworks. Please take the proper safety precautions when using your airsoft guns.
Always wear eye protection when firing your guns. Airsoft is fun, but it's not worth losing an eye.
Illumination switch right here to adjust to all about scopes. Of fibers or lines in an are on the same page, starting with the reticle. The reticle is described as a net of fibers or lines inside the eyepiece. What's up, GITV? I need some water. Close eye relief. This comes into play especially if you have a gun with a lot of kick. You don't want your gun, or you don't want your scope. Train. There's a train coming. Image with an eye relief really far away. Most scopes, another train. Damn it.